All right, Shabbos, say good morning. Let's begin. A lot to do today. Today's daf is Tes Zayin 16, but we are picking up on Tes Vav Amud Beis 15b, the Mishnah. Beautiful, beautiful daf today. Chamisha Tamin, the Chamisha Muadin. We'll say there are 5 different categories of Tam. There are 5 different categories of Tam, which have the potential to evolve into Muad. What are they? I said before we get into that. Habehema ena mu'edes. So at first, a behema is not considered to be muad, rather is considered to be tam for the following activities: lo ligach v'lo ligof, not to gore, not to push; v'lo lashoch, not to bite; v'lo lirbots, not to squat on; v'lo livot, and not to kick. So we'll say, if an animal, these are all parts of Karen. And what the Mishnah is teaching me is that an animal is not assumed to be aggressive in nature. We'll see certain exceptions to that. And therefore, again, the first 3 times that an animal commits or damages through one of these acts, the animal is considered to be a tam, and therefore, again, only pays chatzi nezek. Once an animal does it 3 times, then by definition it becomes a muad and pays nezek shalim. Hashein mu'edes le'echol es ha'ra'ila. So shein ultimately, again, is considered to be muad, to eat that which is fit for. So also what that means is, remember, shein refers to damage done in the normal course of the animal getting pleasure. So remember, again, the idea over here is that shein is muad from the beginning. That as opposed to keren, which only becomes muad after 3 times, an animal is muad for shein damage from the beginning. Haregel mu'ades lishbar b'derech hilucha. Similarly, again, regel represents damage that an animal does in its normal course of walking. So an animal is considered to be muad for regel damage from the beginning. V'shor hamuad v'shor hamazik b'shus hanizak. Furthermore, again, a shor hamuad. So we'll say, so again, shor hamuad means an animal that has now committed the act of damage more than 3 times. That's called a shor hamuad. Or shor hamazik b'shus hanizak. Or a shor that commits damage in the rishus of the nizak, of the damaged party, v'ha'adam, and a person. We'll say these are all considered to be examples, ultimately, again, of people who or entities that are a muad from the beginning. Fine. Hazev v'ha'ari. Now the Mishnah is going to speak about categories of animals that are considered to be muad from the beginning. Hazev, a wolf; ha'ari, the lion; the dove, the bear; namar is a leopard; bardalus will translate in the Gemara; nachash, snake; hari elu muadin. I will say these are considered to be muad from the beginning. In other words, any damage these type of animals cause is considered to be muad from the beginning. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Bizman Shem B'nei Tarbus Einan Muadin. It's interesting. Rabbi Elazar says that when they are domesticated, then ultimately, again, they are not muad. In other words, that Rabbi Elazar seems to say that you have the ability to domesticate these types of animals, and therefore, if they are domesticated, then l'maisa, again, they become subject to the laws of regular domesticated animals, which essentially would mean that they're only chayiv nezek shalim for keren after engaging in destructive acts 3 times. But a snake, Rabbi Elazar says, can never be domesticated. A snake is always considered to be muad ultimately for damages. Says the Gemara, from the fact that the Mishnah said that shein is muad to eat. In other words, we'll say that for damage done by an animal in the course of pleasure-seeking activities, that an animal is muad from the beginning. So we'll say, so again, the assumption over here that we have to make is that Lamaisa, this is talking about damage done in the reshus of the nizak, damage done in the reshus of the damaged party. And yet, what do we see? V'katani behema eina mu'edes l'shalim kulei avachatzi nezek mishalemes. So we'll say, so the fact that we're setting up the Mishnah as talking about a case of damage done in the rishus of the nizak tells us that by shein you're muad from the beginning, but yet by keren done in the rishus of the nizak, you're only chayiv, at least for the first 3 times before the animal becomes a muad, you're only chayiv chatzi nezek. Money, who's the paying does this reflect? Rabbanan hida amar mishuna karen b'chatzi hanizak chatzi nezek hu demishalim. So we'll say, so the Mishnah seems to be set up according to the Rabbanan, namely again that if you go ahead and you commit an act of karen in the rishus hanizak, in the rishus of the damaged party, that lamaisa again you're only chayiv chatzi nezek. Fine. Aim was safer, but yeah, look at the end of the Mishnah. Shor hamuad v'shor hamazik b'shus hanizak. Remember, the Seifa says the following, that if you have a shor hamuad, which is again a shor that has already damaged 3 times, now has become a habitual offender, or shor hamazik b'shus hanizak, or a shor that does damage in the rishus of the nizak, or the ha'adam, or a person. So we'll say, so in that case, as-sa'an Rabbi Tarfon. Remember, that's talking about a case now that Mishnah then says, you're chayiv in nezek shalim. That would seem to reflect the view of Rabbi Tarfon, the Amar, Mishuna Karen B'Chatzer HaNizak Nezak Shalim Hu D'Mishalim. And yet, because why? Rabbi Tarfon is of the opinion that if an animal commits an act of Karen within the Rishus HaNizak, that he is Chayiv Nezak Shalim. So we'll say, so you see the Shaila. The Shaila is, are you telling me, Reish Rabbanon V'Sefer Rabbi Tarfon? Are you telling me that the Reisha is the Rabbanon, right? That the first part of the Mishnah is the Rabbanon, and the Seifa, the second part of the Mishnah is Rabbi Tarfon. So we'll say, so remember, generally the Gemara does not like that. Meaning, generally, if we could set up the Mishnah according to one author, that's definitely preferable. To which the Gemara says, well, in this case over here, yes, in this case it is true, the Reisha is the Rabbanon, and the Seifa is Rabbi Tarfon. The Amar Lishmol Rabbi Yehuda, because after all, Shmuel said Rabbi Yehuda, Shinina, sharp one, Shavok Masnisen, leave aside your interpretation of the Mishnah, and follow me. How do you follow me? Reisha Rabbanon v'Sefer Rabbi Tarfon. The Reisha is the Rabbanon, and ultimately the Sefer is Rabbi Tarfon. So also you understand the inherent contradiction the Gemara is trying to solve is it sounds like it sounds like both the Reisha and the Sefer are talking about Keren done in the rishus of the nizak. Keren, damage done in the property of the damaged party. Yet the Reisha says that you're chayiv chatzi nezek, and the Seifa says you're chayiv nezek shalim. How do we reconcile that contradiction? So the first approach of the Gemara is very simple. The Reisha is the Rabbanon, who says that Keren done in the rishus hanizak ultimately is chatzi nezek, and the Seifa is Rabbi Tarfon, who says that Keren done in the rishus of the nizak is going to be nezek shalim. Fine. Now the Gemara is going to give a second answer. Rabbi Elazar b'Shvei de Rav Amar. Rabbi Elazar of Rav said, top of Tes Zayin, Kula Rabbi Tarfon. You know, the entire Mishnah, in fact, reflects the view of Rabbi Tarfon. Reisha b'Chatzer miyuchades lepeiros la'achal mehen. So Rabbi Tarfon will say, so the Gemara will say like this. The first part of the Mishnah is talking about a Chatzer, where yes, it is true that damage happens in the Rishus of the Nizak, but listen to this. It's talking about a Chatzer where only one of them, in this case the one of them being the damaged party, has the right to keep his peiros there, right? So only damaged party had the right to keep his produce there, not the damager. But both of them have the right to have their animals there. Watch this. So we'll say, because for Shane, it'll be, for Shane, that property will be called the property of the Nizak. Why? Because it was only the Nizak who had the right to keep his produce there, not the Mazik. So therefore, for Shane purposes, it's the property of the Nizak. And therefore, what we'll say, that's why halacha l'maisa, if in the event, that's why you have to pay Nezek Shalim, ultimately for the Shane. Ulagabe Keren, Havi Rishus Arabim. But we'll say, for Keren, it's called Rishus Arabim. And therefore what? And therefore that's why you'll go ahead and you'll pay Chatzi Nezek. So even according to Rabbi Tarfon, remember, if you do Karen in Rosh Hashanah, ultimately again you'll only have to pay Chatzi Nezek for the first 3 times. Rav Kahana, so Rav Kahana said, I said this over in front of Rav Zvid of Narda. How can you set up the entire Mishnah like Rabbi Tarfon? Hakatani, after all, we learned Hashain mu'edes le'echol asara. Yet we learned, that's what does it say in the Mishnah? That Abba says Shane is actually very interesting. Shane, we know Shane is considered to be muad from the beginning, which means that if an animal damages through Shane, then ultimately you have to pay Nezek Shalim even for the first act of damage. But the Mishnah gives in something very interesting. You're only chayav for Shane if he damages something a ro'ila. Ro'ila means what I will say, that the animal, for example, eats something normal. For example, if an animal eats my utensils, that's not called a normal act of Shane. The animal eats my grapes, that's a normal act of Shane. So the Gemara says, Ro'ila in, Shane Ro'ila lo. From the Mishnah you see what? That an animal is only chayiv for Shane, that's Ro'i. That's normal. But not for an act of Shane, that's not Ro'i. Also listen to this. Now this is fascinating. Now let's play this out. Let's say the animal eats my utensils. So it's not what? Can't be considered what? Can't be considered shame, right? Because Lamaisa, it's a non-normative act of pleasure. So what do you call an act of damage that doesn't fall into the other categories? So what would you call an act where an animal eats kalim? The Gemara suggests you'd have to call that Karen. you'd have to call that Karen, right? Because again, remember, any type of damage that cannot be classified ultimately again as pleasurable activity or derech hiluch or just normative walking of the animal, by definition has to be Karen. Well, if it's Karen then what's Rabbi Tarfon's position by Karen? Rabbi Tarfon says, Rabbi Tarfon says that if you have Karen that occurs in the reshus of the nizak, in the reshus of the damaged party, what's the halacha? Nezek shalem mishalim. Remember, Rabbi Tarfon says you have to pay full nezek. If that's the case, then the Mishnah should have ruled that what? That when you have an animal that ate something that was not ra'ui lo, and it was happening in reshus hanizak, so you should have to pay nezek shalim al tzkeren. And Mishnah doesn't say that. Eloi olam rabbanani. Rather, you have to say the Mishnah, in fact, reflects the view of the Rabbanon. The Mishnah was missing a part, and here's how you have to read it. There are 5 different cases of tam. Vim huadu, and ultimately, again, if the tam became a muad, so chamishtan muadin. So we'll say, and all 5 of these have the ability to become a muad. In other words, there are 5 cases of tam, and if the animal becomes a habitual offender, ultimately, again, the animal becomes a muad. V'shein v'regel muadin mitchilasan. We'll say shein in regel, you're considered to be a muad from the beginning. So we'll say your chai is very important yisod, by the way. Your shein and regel are muad from the beginning. It's only keren that has the concept of tam until it damages 3 times and then becomes a muad. So it says the Gemara v'heichan ha'adasan, and ultimately again, where are shein and regel considered to be a muad? B'chatzar hanizak. Both says it's very important yisod. See, each thing has its own chumrus. So remember, for keren, which means aggressive damage done by an animal is considered to be a tam the first 3 times, which means it only pays chatzi nezek. 4th time and on, it's a muad, nezek shalim. Shein and regel, again, shein refers to damages done by an animal in the course of the pursuit of pleasure. Regel, derech hilucha, while the animal is walking normally. For those, you are muad from the beginning. However, again, the idea is by shein and regel, you're only chayiv for damage is done in the reshus of the nizak. However, again, if damage done in reshus harabim, you are pater for. Therefore, again, the Gemara says, Ve'echan ha'adasan, where do we say that shein and regel are muad? Ultimately, again, b'chatzar hanizak, only in the domain of the damaged party. We'll say, it makes sense, by the way, in Rosh Hashanah, you're pater for shein and regel, because in Rosh Hashanah, everyone has permission to be there. So because everyone has permission to be there, there's a heightened level of vigilance that people have to have over their property, over their animals, over their stuff, recognizing that there are other animals, other property, other stuff there as well. Maskif Ravina, so Ravina raised the kasha, Hakatani lakamon, shar hamazik, birshas hanizak, keitzad. But yet we learned later on, what's the case of shar hamazik in the reshus of the nizak? And I also remember again, that Mishnah is talking about, we'll see later on, that Mishnah is talking about the machlokes Rabbi Tarfon and the Rabban. Remember, Rabbi Tarfon says that Karen done in Reshus Hanizak, Karen done in the damager's domain is chayiv nezek shalim. The Rabbanan say chatzi nezek. So amrit b'shlama ayriba mishum hachi katani ketzad. So if you say that our Mishnah is reflecting the view of the machlok, or I should say, if you say that our Mishnah is reflecting the machlokes of Rabbi Tarfon and the Rabbanon, then it makes sense that the next Mishnah picks up with the word ketzad, trying to frame the case. Eli amrit lo ayriba my ketzad. But if you say that our Mishnah is not reflecting the view of, that our Mishnah is not reflecting the machlokes of Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva, then why does the next Mishnah begin with the word ketzad? So the Gemara goes weiter. Rather, Ravina said the Mishnah was missing a piece, and here's how you have to read it. There are 5 cases of tam. Ve'im huadu chamishtan muadin, and if they become muad, right? And if they become habitual offenders, then those 5 could become muad. V'shein v'regel muadim mitchilasan, but for shein and regel, an animal is muad from the beginning. V'zehu shar hamuad. And by the way, when the Torah speaks about a shar hamuad, so the Torah is talking about a shar that became a muad after exhibiting habitual behavior 3 times. V'shor hamazik birshus hanizak, and the case of a shor that damages in the property of the damaged party, machlokis Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanon. This will be machlokis in Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanon. Rabbi Tarfon saying you're chayiv nezik shalim for keren done in the rishus of the nizak. The Rabbanon saying you're chayiv chatzi nezek. V'yesh mu'adim achirim. There are other cases of muad ki yotzei ba'ilu. There are other cases of muad rabosai as well. What are the other cases of muad? Hazev v'hari v'adov v'abardlos v'anamr v'anachash. The other cases of muad will be damage done by a wolf, a lion, a bear, a bardolus, a leopard, a namar, and a snake. So I'll say, so in this version of the Mishnah, or this understanding of the Mishnah, we have a machlokis over here between Rabbi Tarfon and Rabbi Akiva embedded in the Mishnah itself. Taina, Yachabraisa that supports this. Chamisha tamim hein. There are 5 cases of tam. Vim huadu chamishtan muadan. And if ultimately again they become habitual offenders, then they transition from being a tam ultimately to being a muad. B'yet v'shein v'regel muadim mitchilasan. But I will say for shein and regel, you are muad from the beginning, meaning so therefore you have to pay nezek shalim for shein and muad from the beginning. V'zeu shar hamuad, and this is the paradigmatic biblical case of shar hamuad. In other words, we'll say the paradigmatic biblical case of shar hamuad is an animal ultimately that becomes muad after goring or after exhibiting aggressive behavior 3 times. V'shar hamazik birshus hanizak, and if you have a shor that damages in the rishus of the damaged party, machlokis Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanon. This becomes the machlokis in Rabbi Tarfon and the Rabbanon. V'yesh mu'adin acherim. Both say, so this price, by the way, is just pretty much quoting our Mishnah verbatim. V'yesh mu'adin acherim ki yotzei ba'ilu. There are other animals that are muad like these, and what are they? Hazev v'hari hadov v'anamar v'avardos v'anochash. Both say, so these animals again, the wolf, the lion, the bear, the leopard, the bardolus, and the snake are considered to be ultimately again muad from the beginning. Fine. So we'll say, there are some who phrase this more as a question. Tanan, we learn chamisha tamim v'chamisha muadin, that there are 5 cases of tam, and which then could become 5 cases of muad. In other words, tam, those tamim could go ahead. Tamos, I don't know. Okay, we'll have to ask. Just ask any 5-year-old girl; they'll be able to tell you, right? Tam. So the idea. So which one is it? Tam, whatever it is. These 5 cases of tam ultimately could become muad. So the Gemara says, "Sulaka." Is that? Are there only 5 cases of muad? V'ha'ika hazeh v'hari v'adav v'anamar v'abardlos v'anachash. But there are all these other cases of animals that are muad from the beginning. Umeshani am Ravina chasrei mesar v'achikatani. Ravina said, rather there was a piece missing, and here's how you have to read it. Chamisha tamim heim v'im huadu chamishtan muadin. There are 5 cases that begin as tam, and we'll say, and if they become habitual offenders, then what? Then they transition from being a tam to being a muad. V'shein v'regel muadin mitchilasan, and shein and regel, an animal is muad, and therefore has to pay nezek shalim from the beginning. V'zehu shar hamuad v'shar hamazik. V'zehu shar hamuad, and this is the case, the biblically paradigmatic case, or the paradigmatic biblical case of shar muad, is an animal that begins as a tam, but as a result of habitual aggressive behavior becomes a muad. V'shar mazik b'shas hanizak, and a shar that damages in the rishus hanizak machlokis Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanon. The machlokis, that is the machlokis Rabbi Tarfon v'Rabbanon. Rabbi Tarfon saying Yechaim nezek shalim, the Rabbanon chatzi nezek. V'yesh muadim achirim ki yotzei ba'ilu, and there are other cases of muad. There are muads from the beginning, and those are hazev v'hari hadov v'hanamar v'abardlis v'hanachash. So both sides. So what comes out over here is the following. So far, most of this was just a restating of our Mishnah, but for our purposes, what does come out is there is the machlokes in our Mishnah between Rabbi Tarfon and the Rabbanon about nezek done, or I should say keren done in the rishus of the nizak. Rabbi Tarfon says that the novelty of keren done in the rishus of the nizak is that you are chayiv nezek shalim, even what? Even for the first time damage is committed. Rabbanan say no. Even Karen Dana Shurabim is still only going to be what? Is still only going to be Chatzi Nezek. Other than that case, everyone agrees that for Karen, the first 3 times the animal commits Karen damage is a tam, therefore only pays Chatzi Nezek. 4th time and on, you are a muad. The Mishnah also teaches me that there are certain animals that are considered to be muad from the beginning. We'll discuss them as well. And number 3 is that for shein and regel, damage done through shein and regel, an animal is considered to be muad from the beginning, and therefore nezek shalim already from the time of the first offense. Below the boats. So remember, the Mishnah said that an animal is not considered to be a muad Lirbots, to go ahead and squat on utensils and crush them. So we'll say what that means is that if an animal squats down on utensils and crushes them, the first 3 times the animal does this, it's what? It's a tam, and therefore it pays what? Chatzi nezek. It's only from the 4th time and on that ultimately the animal is a muad and will pay nezek shalim. Amar Rabbi Elazar, lo shon ala pachim gidolim. When do we say that it's abnormal? It's mishuneh for an animal to squat and damage on utensils. That's only large utensils. Avapachim kitanim orchehu. But will say for small utensils, it is normal for the animal to damage, to squat down. Rashi says, "Avapachim kitanim lirbots v'imrav tzalem b'shasarabim pater b'shasanizek chayeves nezek shalim d'toldo deregel." I just want to point out there's another piece, which is, remember, for shein and regel, you are pater for shein and regel committed in the reshus harabim. Only chayev for shein and regel committed in their sentence. I'm going to try to put this all down on a table so that we can have it for constant reference, because these ideas, unless someone else wants to. Okay, I'll do it. So there are certain principles which you're going to be operating with throughout the entirety of the Masechta. So this is the other one over here. Shein and regel, your pater and rishus harabim, chayiv and rishus hayochid. So now the Gemara is saying is the following: when do we say that if the animal? So remember, the case over here of shein would be where the animal is going ahead. Reuven's animal enters into my rishus and sits down on my kalim. So the Mishnah said that an animal is considered to be a tam for squatting on kalim and crushing them. Ravina is coming up. Rabbi Elazar is saying that's only true with large utensils, because we'll say the assumption over here is that a large utensil, the animal will have to maneuver itself to be able to squat down and sit on it. But small utensils, where b'pashta swat, the animal is just going to sit down wherever it wants to. The animals, that is considered to be a normative case of damage, and therefore halacha l'maisa, the owner of the animal will be chayiv. So the Gemara goes weiter, because that'll be again a told of regel. So let's say that this price supports this. So what does the Brisa say? An animal is mu'edes, an animal is mu'ed from the beginning, to walk in its normative fashion, to break stuff as it walks, and to crush people, other animals, and other kelim. In other words, we'll say animals sit down where they want to sit down, whether something's in that place or not. And therefore, again, if in the course of sitting down, they crush a person, another animal, or utensils, ultimately what? Ultimately, again, that's considered to be a normative act of regel, and therefore, again, the owner of the animal will be chayiv. Good morning, Mr. Schoenfeld. Right? And therefore, and so let's say, so understand, so that's a case, by the way, where what? Where again, that would be a case of regel. That would be a normative case of regel. So we'll say, so now what do you see from here? We have a contradiction. The Mishnah on one hand said that you're not chayiv for, an animal's not chayiv for squatting down on kalim. The Brisa said the animal is chayiv for squatting down on kalim. How do I reconcile this contradiction? So the simple reconciliation will be how? The Mishnah is talking about large utensils, which I will not be chayiv for, the animal's not chayiv for, whereas the Brisa is talking about what? Small utensils, which the animal will be chayiv for. To which the Gemara says, well, maybe not. Dilma may not sad. Maybe when the Brisa speaks about crushing utensils, it's not talking about squatting on them, but rather what? The animal brushes against them with his side, with his body, as he's going ahead and walking through the Rosh Hashanah, or the Rosh Hashanah, I should say. Ika da Amri, others say, Amr Rabbi Elazar, lo tema pachin gedolim hudalo orchei. Well, the others have a different version of this. That Rabbi Elazar says, don't assume the Mishnah is referring to large utensils, the lab orchei, because that's not considered to be a normative act of damage. Aval pachin ketanim orcheu, but unless you think that perhaps for the animal to squat down on small utensils is normal. Ela afilu pachin ketanim nami lav orcheu. Rather, Rabbi says, Rabbi Elazar, even for the animal to crush small utensils, is it considered to be a non-normative act? So the Gemara says, Meisvei, but 1 second, is that true? Yet the Brisa says that it is normal for an animal to go ahead and sit down and squat upon and crush another person, another animal, or utensils. Amar Rabbi Elazar, Dilma minat sad. Or Rabbi Elazar says maybe that's not a case of squatting now, but rather it's a case where the animal is damaging by brushing against something. Some pose this as a kasha. Tanan v'lo lirbots. The Mishnah said that an animal is not considered to be muad for regular purposes, for squatting down on kalim. But yet again, the Brisa said that an animal is considered to be muad to squat down and to crush a person or another animal or utensils. Rabbi Elazar lo kasha, kan bepachim gedolim, kan bepachim kitanim. Rabbi Elazar said it's not a kasha. One is talking about a case of large utensils, one is talking about a case of small utensils. So we'll say, so bottom line, the way we paskin is the following. That is considered to be an abnormal act for an animal to go ahead and squat down on large utensils, pachim gedolim. However, again, it is considered to be a normal act for an animal to squat down on small utensils and crush them like that. So therefore, if an animal were to go ahead and squat down and crush small utensils in the rishus of the nizak, in the property of the damaged party, the halacha b'irata will say that would be called regel, and you would be chayiv nezek shalem. How do you gauge a small utensil and a large utensil? It appears that a small utensil is something that an animal could just sit down on without any additional maneuvering or positioning of its body. It just sits down and sits on top of a thing. A large utensil would have to be something that the animal would almost have to place itself on top of. So that ultimately, again, would be more meshuna. That might fall into the category of Karen. But for our purposes, if an animal damages pachim kitanim, ultimately the animal will be chayiv for that. That's considered to be an act of regel. Pachim gidolim not. Hazevari. Now we get into a very interesting discussion about the halachic status of what we'll call undomesticated or non-domesticated animals. It's amazing, it's an amazing timing of this sugya. Here it's just amazing that in the last just week or so, the news with these type of situations, first the boy who fell into the pen at the zoo with the gorilla, Nebuch, this boy who was dragged off in Orlando by the alligator. It's an amazing muster, by the way, that as much as man subdues the world, Kadosh Baruch Hu said the Kivshua tells us to subdue the world, but yet again there are certain forces of nature that are just beyond man. It's an amazing thing. They're just we could travel to the moon. But yet we don't have the ability to tame wildlife, all the wildlife on this world. It's an incredibly humbling thing. So the Gemara said the following: Hazevari, my bardulus. What's a bardulus? Amar Rabbi Yehuda, nafraza. Oh, very helpful. A bardulus is a nafraza. Fine. So the Gemara said, my nafraza. So no, what's a nafraza? Amar Rabbi Yosef, apa. Again, this is very helpful. Meisvei. So obviously the Gemara. Now, obviously for the Gemara, these are helpful terms. For us, these are not very helpful. Meisvei. Rabbi Meir Omer af hatzavua. So Rabbi Meir said even at savua. Rabbi Elazar Omer af hanachash, and Rabbi Elazar says even the snake. These are all different examples of animals that cannot be considered domesticated. Rabbi Yosef tzavua zuapa, and yet Rabbi Yosef said that the tzavua ultimately again is an apa as well. Lo kashya. Kan bit tzavua zachar, kan bit tzavua nekeva. I will say one is talking about a male tzavua, one is talking about a female. Okay, this sanya tzavua zachar la'achar sheva shanim na'asa atalef. So we'll say this is a very interesting sugya. If we have a few minutes, we'll discuss it. So it's a male tzavua after 7 years becomes an atalef. We'll say atalef is a bat. So somehow a tzavua morphs after 7. A male tzavua after 7 years morphs into a bat. Atalif la'achar sheva shanim na'asa arpad. So an atalif after 7 years becomes an arpad, which I will say is another type of bat. Arpad la'achar zayin shanim na'asa kimush. An arpad after 7 years, kimush is literally a nettle, meaning a type of prickly plant. Kimush la'achar sheva shanim na'asa choch. So a kimush, a nettle plant, after 7 years becomes a thorn. Chuch la'achar sheva shanim na'asa shade. And a thorn after 7 years becomes a shade. So we'll say, so just, again, I wish we had more time, but I'll just tell you, the Maharsha explains this Gemara, obviously not to be understood literally, but rather as an incredible message, which is, I'll just read to you one line in the Maharsha, Ve'ech sheyi yehu mevuar, kala molid bedomelo. The Maharsha says the message over here is, we'll say that kala molid, whenever something creates something, it creates something in his own image. Ukimo sha'afahu rasha ben achashim v'min chaya mishtanahu molid bedomelo davar ofos la'atalif v'arpad v'achakach li'lanas agrum. The idea of the Mishnah is, the idea of this statement is, I will say, if you look at all of these things are damaging in nature. So the idea is that ultimately, again, if an entity is damaging in nature, it creates other damaging things as well. So the Ben Yehoyada picks up on this Maharsha and he says something amazing. He says at the end of the day, the disposition that a person has in life colors their creations in this world. So the idea that the Gemara is saying over here is that damaging things create other damaging things. But the Ben Yoda says in life also, we'll say if a person has negative midos, those negative midos come out in my home, those negative midos come out in my children, those negative midos ultimately come out in the life around me. The person you are, the disposition you have, comes out in all areas of your life. He goes on. He says, furthermore, Shidro shal Adam. This is another amazing Gemara. The spine of a person, la'achar sheva shanim na'aseh nachash. After a person dies, so their spine, ultimately after 7 years, becomes a snake. Now, when does that happen? V'hani mili dilokara b'modim. That's only true if a person didn't bow properly in modim. So I'll say, so again, what does this mean? So the Maharsha says something amazing. The Maharsha says that the act of bowing properly in modim, remember the Gemara, we learned this in Daf Yomi. The Gemara Masechtas Berachos says you're supposed to bow in modim until you feel the vertebrae in your back clenched together. So bowing in modim represents a form of humility. I'm humbling myself before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Those who don't humble themselves before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, what does it mean my spine becomes a snake? Both say the snake was the one creature that did not humble itself before God. Remember again, it was the Nachash ultimately that convinces Chava to sin. It was the Nachash ultimately again that did not respect the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So that's the Gemara means metaphorically when it says that one who does not bow in modim, one who does not humble himself in this world, his spine becomes, obviously not literal, but the point that the Gemara is trying to make is that those who did not humble themselves before HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world ultimately will have to stand in the cheshbon for that in the world to come. Omer Mar, Rabbi Meir Omer, Afat Savua. Rabbi Meir said, even a savua, which is a type of animal, is considered to be muad from the beginning. Rabbi Elazar Omer, Af Hanachash. Rabbi Elazar said, even the snake. Says the Mishnah, if you look at Rashi, Af Hanachash, Mediktani Af, Mechlal de Rabbi Elazar havu enach muadim. So also listen to this. So Rabbi Elazar says that the lashon over here of achanachash indicates to us that it's even the snake. Rabbi Elazar seems to indicate that perhaps he disagrees with the other cases and says that those other cases ultimately again are not muadim from the beginning. I b'hanan to Rabbi Elazar omer bisman shein b'nei tarbus einon muadim ba'nachash muad li'olam. But yet again we had in the Mishnah that Rabbi Elazar said that when those other animals are not domestic, or so when those other animals are domestic, they are domesticated, they are not muad. But the nachash is muad forever. Tani nachash. So don't have Rabbi Elazar saying af ha-nachash, but rather say Rabbi Elazar saying nachash. That nachash is in a category of its own. Otherwise, Rabbi Elazar holds that those other animals, the ze'ev, the dove, the ari, the bardulus, that potentially they can become domesticated. But however, again, according to Rabbi Elazar, one animal that can never become domesticated, that is the snake. Amr Shmuel, and I will say, so now this, by the understand, this discussion of domesticating wild animals is a fascinating one. So listen to this case. Amr Shmuel, Ari Barishas Harabim. So also listen to this. I have a pet lion. So what happens? I'm walking my lion through the Rishas Harabim. And what happens? Doras va'achal pater. So we'll say, now normally when an animal goes, when a lion, because it is the king of the food chain, does something very interesting. A lion does not kill its prey before it eats it, but rather it pins it down and it eats it like that. Meaning because again, the lion is not concerned that the prey is going to escape, and therefore doesn't have to kill it before eating it. So it pins it down and it eats it. So that's the lashon over here. So the Arizur Sarabim, if it pins the animal down and eats it, pater. So then the animal is pater. I'll say, why is the animal pater? Ultimately, Rashi says, Daras shelo harga elamichayim achla. It ate it live. Pater da'archehu. The Shein Birshus Harabim Pater. Because just listen to this. It sounds a little bit strange, but this is a case of Shein Birshus Harabim. Right? The animal's going ahead, the Ari is just eating in its normative fashion. Again, pinning the animal down and eating it live. See, what's the halacha with Shein Birshus Harabim? You're Pater for Shein Birshus Harabim. So however, Taraf V'achal, but if the lion first killed its prey and then it ate it, Chayiv. Both say then ultimately the owner will be chayiv. Why look at Rashi? Chayiv, the lav archehu, They told that the keren who because they both say the lion killing its prey first and then eating it, that's abnormal. Any abnormal act of damage falls into what category? Falls into the category of keren, and therefore chatzi nezek in rishus harabim. So the Gemara says daras va'achal pater. So now the Gemara explains this: when the animal pins down its prey and eats it, so you're pater. Why? That's called shein b'rishus harabim. Kevan da'archei lemidras. Because since it is normal for the ari to pin down its prey and to eat it, it's no different than if the lion ate fruits and vegetables. It's considered to be an act of shein rishus harabim, and therefore your pater. Taraf lav orchehu. But again, what's the halacha? But if the animal first kills its prey and then eats it, that's abnormal. That'll be an act of keren b'rishus harabim, and therefore the owner will be chayiv chatzi nezek. Lemeimra. Are you telling me then that it's abnormal for a lion to first kill its prey before it eats it? We'll say, what do we do about the pasuk? The pasuk says in pasuk in Nahum, Arye Toref Bade Gorosav. The animal literally will kill on behalf of its cubs, which sounds like the lion does kill for food, kills the food and brings it back for its cubs. To which the Gemara says, yes, Bishvil Gorosav, correct. For its cubs, the animal will kill and then bring it back for the cubs. For itself, however, what? The animal does not kill before it feeds. It pins the animal down and feeds then. Umechanek lelivos. So what the pasuk goes on, that the lion will go ahead and choke its prey. Lelivos means lelivos is the lavi, is the lioness. So the lion will kill prey for it. So you see over here, it's normal for a lion to kill its prey. No, b'shir levaosav. Yes, when the lion brings that, so we'll say, in other words, here's the chilik. If the lion is eating right then and there, so the lion pins down its prey and eats it alive. If it's takeout, then lemaisa again, the lion will first go ahead and kill and then bring back. So again, if the animal itself is eating in rishus harabim, to kill is meshuna, that'll be keren. To pin down, ultimately again, will be normal and chatzi nezek. And nezek. And pater. Because remember, this is a case of shein and rishus harabim. The Mali Taraf Chorav. So let's say the Gemara just keeps quoting the pasuk from Nahum, but yet the pasuk says that he will go ahead and literally fill his holes, which means his cave. That lion will bring back prey to its cave, which indicates that the lion does kill its prey. Bishul Chorav. Again, yes, to store food, it is normal for an animal first to go ahead and kill its prey. Uma'ono sav treifa, and its lair is filled with treifa, with dead animals. In other words, fills it with prey. Bishul ma'ono sav. Again, yes, to fill its lairs, that it'll go ahead and kill its prey. But to eat right then and there, the animal first kills, and then ultimately the animal pins down and then goes ahead and feeds. But we learned, but we learned that if a chaya enters in to the chatzar nizak, if the chaya enters in to the chatzar of the nizak, to the chatzar of the damaged party, so tarfa behema, if it goes ahead and what? Kills an animal, va'achla basar, and it eats the meat, mishalim nezek shalim. So we'll say that'll be a case, ultimately again, of shein done in the rishus hanizak, for which you are chayiv nezek shalim. But what do you see from here? Now we'll say chaya would seem to include any non-domesticated animal, which includes what? Includes a lion. This seems to tell me that if the lion kills its prey and then feeds, that is a normative act, and therefore a normative act of shein, and therefore the owner is chayiv nezek shalim. Ha'chamayaskinon, what's the case? Shetarfa lahaniach. The case over here is where the lion killed the prey in order to what Rabosai? In order to store it somewhere else. Ha'ach lakatani. I will say it's not what the Brisa. The Brisa says that the lion is killing the prey and then what? And then eating it. This is interesting. Bishenim l'chava achla, where the lion had a change of heart. Meaning the lion ultimately again first was going to eat it, but then decided to go ahead and store it. Says the Gemara, that's very interesting. Minayadinan, how exactly do you know when a lion has a change of heart? In other words, the Gemara says, come on, that you can't answer that because there's no way of telling that. Va'od, furthermore, the Shmuel nami damahachiu. Furthermore, again, I will say, maybe Shmuel, Rashi says, the Amar taraf va'achal chayiv, the amay chayiv, damahachiu, the taraf amanas latzniya, Maybe Shmuel's case is also talking about a case where what? The animal killed its prey in order to store it afterwards. To which the Gemara says, "V'od Shmuel nami dilmahachi." Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, Litzdadin katani. Here's, you have to understand it in two parts. Shetarfa lahaniach, if the animal went ahead and killed its prey to store it, O darsa va'achla, or the animal pinned down its prey and ate it, Mishalemes nezek shalim vosai, those are two normative acts of damage. So remember again, the normative acts will be if the animal kills its prey and then you see it drags it off to the cave. So it kills its prey to store it, that's normal. Or B, the animal pins down its prey and eats its prey while still alive and pinned down. I will say those are normal cases, those are normal acts of shame, and therefore you will be chayiv nezek shalim if it's in Rosh Nizak, or you'll be pater if it's in Rosh Rabin. Ki ka'amar Shmuel, what Shmuel's case? Ba'ari tarbus. I will say Shmuel's case is talking about what? Of a domesticated lion. Va'aliba de Rabbi Elazar da'amar lav orche. And according to Rabbi Elazar, again, a domesticated lion would not engage in these behaviors. Ihachi afilu darsa nami lechayiv. If that's the case, then even when the animal kills its prey, ultimately again it should be chayiv. Ela Ravina lava Shmuel itmar. Rather, both say you have to say that Ravina was not going on Shmuel's statement. Ela amasnisa, but ultimately reflecting the view of the Mishnah. Ki tani masnisa, and what is the Mishnah talking about? Ba'ari tarbos, with a domesticated lion. Va'ali with Rabbi Elazar damar lav arche, and according to Rabbi Elazar says this is a non-normative act. Ihachi chatzi nezek bai l'shalom. If that's the case, then it should have to be chatzi nezek. Because also remember, any non-normative act of damage by definition becomes what? Becomes keren, and therefore again for keren time you should have to pay chatzi nezek. Di'iyad, where ultimately the animal is a muad. Ihachi mai hai diktani le. Gabi told it the shame. If that's the case, ultimately again, why is it even mentioned by told it the shame? I mean, Gabi told it the Karen by the Misneh. It should ultimately be stated by Karen. To which the Gemara says Kasha. Ultimately, this is a good question. So Rabbi say, so this is a very important sugya because the fundamental shaila over here is: can you domesticate wild animals or not in halacha? So we'll say the Shulchan Aruch Paskins. This is in Choshen Mishpat Simin Shin Peites Sivches. Chamisha mine chaya mu'adin mitchilas briyasan lahazik. There are 5 animals of Osai that are considered to be muad from the beginning, meaning Chazal understood that their inherent nature is to damage. Afilu imhein b'nei tarbus. Even if what? Even if you keep one of them as a pet, in other words, even if you think you've domesticated them, Chazal tell us their spirit is undomesticatable. What? I didn't read it yet. You don't even know. Right? So again, I don't know. Is that the right word? Undomesticatable, right? What are the undomesticatable? Say Elohim. These are therefore what about? Say lefichach im heziku o hemisu b'negicha o b'neshicha udriso ki yotzei bohem. Right? Chayiv nezek shalom. Therefore, we'll say any of these animals, even if they're quote unquote domesticated, you're a chayiv nezek shalom from the beginning. The Elohim. This is the list. Haze'ev. Ultimately, again, the zev ha'ari. Hari, the lion, Hadov, the bear, Hanamar, the leopard, Bardulus. So both say, actually, interesting enough, the Appa, I didn't translate it before. Appa, the Gemara most understand to mean, or the Tzavua, the Appa is a polecat. A polecat, also someone in the leopard family. So v'chein v'kach hanachash shenashach, and so to a snake. Hari zemua dafilu haya ben tarba. So we'll say all of these animals ultimately again are considered to be muads from the beginning, and even if they're quote unquote domesticated, they are considered in halacha to be undomesticated animals, and therefore by definition are muad to go ahead and damage. The Ish Omrim, dog also. That's a second. Right. So again, that's also. This is very important yesod. That's why, by the way, this is a very important yesod. So if a person were to quote unquote keep one of these undomesticated animals as a pet, just because people say, oh, this lion is so sweet, it cuddles with my toddler, it's so beautiful, and then it mauls off someone's face, so then the halach is will say that animal is considered to be a muad. The fact that a person considers it to be a domesticated animal, the halacha says is irrelevant. We understand the teva of these particular animals, their teva ultimately is to damage. Says the Mishnah, Ma bein tam lemuad. What's the chiluk between tam and muad? So let's just read the Mishnah and then we'll stop. So what's the difference between tam and muad? Ella, shatam eshalin chatzi nezek migufo. So we'll say, that a tam goes ahead and pays half damages. So we'll say, so understand the following. Now, when we say half damages, so for example, a tam pays half damages. And tam pays half damages. So you assess what the damage is. The damage is X. So for a tam damager, you have to pay 50% of X. But here's the chat, migufo. I will say the damager's liability is capped at the value of the damaging animal. So, for example, if my animal damages another animal, that animal is worth $2,000, and I've damaged. Let's say I killed the animal. So now what happens? I have to pay $1,000 worth of damages. But my animal itself is only worth $500. So again, my liability is capped at the value of my animal. So I have to pay half damages, but the cap on the damages is the value of the damager's animal. On the flip side, umuad mishalim nezek shalim min aliyah. On the other hand, the muad animal has to pay, or I should say a muad damager, has to pay nezek shalim min ha'aliyah. Min ha'aliyah will say means that there's even personal liability. In other words, that I have to pay damages no matter, even if those damages far eclipse the value of the damaging animal. Min ha'aliyah means I have to pay even for my personal assets. Gemara, my aliyah, what does it mean min aliyah? It means you have to pay from the best of your property. So I will say, that's what aliyah means. You have to pay even from the best of your assets. V'cheinu Omer, so too it says by Chizkiah, Vayishkav Chizkiah ma'avosavik b'ru ma'ala kivrei b'nei David. Chizkiah died, and they buried him with literally again, b'ma'ala kivrei b'nei David, with the ma'ala kivrei, the ma'ala kvaros of b'nei David. V'amar Elazar, b'ma'ala, what does it mean b'ma'ala? Chizkiah was buried by the best of the members of the Davidic family. And who were they? Uman, Nihu, David, Ushlomo. This ultimately again refers to David Ushlomo. Vaikberu bikvurosav asher kara lo bi'ir David. They buried him ultimately again in the Kvarim. This also is referring ultimately again. Actually, no, we'll stop over here with where this is by King Asa. We'll pick up with this Gemara Mir Hashem tomorrow.